1783, with the Treaty of Paris agreed as the culmination of the American Revolution, land ceded to the United States reached as far west as the Mississippi River, encouraging Americans to migrate into the Northwest Territory north of the Ohio River. 20 years later, in 1803, the Louisiana Purchase doubled the size of the country once again, though most of the territory west of the Mississippi was unknown to Americans. President Jefferson commissioned the Corps of Discovery Expedition, better known as the Lewis and Clark Expedition after its leaders, Meriwether Lewis and William Clark, to explore this unknown region. Its goal was to map the Louisiana Territory's geographical features and life, both human and animal, establish an American presence in the region to strengthen claims over the territory and open trade links with Native Americans, and find a passage to the Pacific Ocean. In a pre-modern age, travel by river was often faster and easier than travel by land. In late summer 1803, the Lewis and Clark expedition left Pittsburgh and headed down the Ohio River in a keelboat large enough for 22 people. They would travel a few miles each day and sleep in a community along the river or bivouac overnight in their boat. By mid-fall, they reached the Illinois country and on November 11 arrived at Fort Massac. The fort, originally constructed by the French, burned later to the ground by Native Americans, was a small but strategically located base which President Washington had rebuilt to protect the military and economic interests of the United States along the Ohio Valley frontier. The fort, constructed behind a wooden stockade, consisted of two main soldier barracks, officers' quarters, blockhouses, and a small entrance gate. Upon arrival, Lewis and Clark met the fort's assistant military agent, Mr. William Swan, who was in charge of financial affairs at the fort. They were still recruiting individuals for the expedition and agreed with Swan that George Drouillard, son of a French-Canadian father and Shawnee mother, who was a frontiersman with hunting, trapping, and mapping skills, who could speak Shawnee, French, and English, and knew some Native American Sign Language, would be ideal as a worker and contracted at $25 per month to join the party. Drouillard's role as interpreter and the primary huntsman made him a valuable member of the expedition over the next 3 years. Despite several of the men being interested in joining the team, only one other volunteer at Fort Massac met the necessary standards required by Lewis and Clark. The expedition remained at Fort Massac for 2 nights, experiencing military life for a couple of days as they interacted with the few military men based in the fort. Late in the afternoon of November 13, they left Fort Massac, sailed a few miles downriver, then camped on the southeastern side of the Ohio. The following day, they reached the confluence of the Ohio and Mississippi rivers at Cairo, Illinois. The expedition camped for the winter in Camp Dubois, across the Mississippi River from the confluence of the Missouri River. In May 1804, they began their journey up the Missouri with a crew of more than 40, traversing the Louisiana Territory and eventually reaching the Pacific coast some 2 years after they had reached Fort Massac. In 1807, some 4 years after the expedition was announced, Lewis and Clark returned to Washington, D.C. with a great wealth of information about the land west of the Mississippi. Their time spent at Fort Massac, though brief, brought them together with Drouillard, whose work was indispensable to the expedition.